Good afternoon.
To silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. The meeting today will be webcast and the recording will also be available for people to view later through the Council's website. Whenever the meeting is open to the public, photography, video and sound are
Here to help the members make decisions, and the members of the committee are sat down the two legs or the two arms extending out.
Shy green, bright side.
Tony?
Pasaudi.
Gary?
Afternoon, Chair. It's Councillor Gallagher from Shy Green, Brightside. Thank you.
Mike? Thank you very much. Abby, do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Nigat Basharat.
So we come to the minutes of the previous meeting at agenda item 5, which starts on page 9 of your papers as a matter of accuracy from the last meeting. So we're actually going to swap the agenda items round and take the item, the paint scheme out. Oh, that comes later. Okay. Starts on page 49 of the agenda, and we're taking that item first, if you please. I'm going.
And in your main agenda papers referred to external paint scheme to the building, but as that doesn't need planning permission, with mounting posts within the Shepley Spitfire, which is a pub in its own grounds in Totley. You can see there on the aerial image that to the south is woodland scheme. Otherwise, the area is on the edge of the residential area of Tartment scheme that I mentioned. Just beneath the freestanding pub sign, almost on the boundary there, and it's that palm tree, it is one of the posts, and that you can see a light coloured post. The garage building is just to the right of that image there. This is an existing smoking shelter on the elevation facing Green Oak Road with level access coming out onto the area where the pergola is. And these are sort of further images of that area. So where the pergola will stand is just the other side of customers. This area is untouched beyond it, other than for the location of further lighting, stringing between posts in those areas. This is an image looking back towards the properties on Green Oak Road again through the woodland. These were taken a couple of months ago, I think, so the trees are beginning to come into leaf now. And this is more of the beer garden. Sorry, I should just correct myself. The thing to the pub. You can see the relationship there and the separation between the lighting and the boundary at the back. This is a public footpath which runs up the side of the apartment building and then goes beyond into the countryside. So I think they give you a reasonable overall reflection of the nature of the site. That area there, which is used mainly for storage at the moment, will also be turned to lawn, but that doesn't need planning permission. So that's a plan of the site, and with the pergola limited to the almost triangular portion of the site, the bottom half of that. I'll leave that there, Chair. Well, I just briefly say that in policy terms, there's no significant objection. We've had in the order of 16 objections to the proposal, which is why it's here today, within the adjacent woodland and to neighbouring residents. Officers were supportive of those concerns insofar as they related to the TV and the speakers. We thought that would create a particularly noisy environment, particularly through when the sporting events and things of that nature. that would be audible to residents in a manner that would cause disturbance. The existing beer garden causes results in a level of noise, as external beer gardens do, and that will be audible at properties nearby. But we don't feel that the timing of the lighting and the other pertinent one is relating to a management plan.
Thanks for the report. Bottom of page 57, and you mentioned it anyway, about the timing of the lights coming off at 11. How many times, you know, if they get reported 2 or 3 times, does that mean it's going to come back to this board for approval to extend these lights?
Chair, if there were breaches of that condition, then we'd deal with those in a normal way by contacting the applicant, reminding them of their obligations, and if that continued, then we have the potential to serve breach of condition notices and potentially prosecute. If, as a result of that exercise, they decided they wanted to vary that, then they'd submit a Section 73 application to vary the condition. Whether it came back here would depend upon the level of opposition that occurred at that time, so I couldn't really answer that for certain at this stage.
Yes, I'm happy with that, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got Councillor Davison indicating.
Thank you, Chair. I think, Chris, that you just answered that my query, but I mean, I think the conditions 2 to 5 cover what people would be worried about. But there was just the thing about if they wanted a one-off thing, they could actually apply elsewhere, couldn't they, for a licence to, and that we have no control over that. But this, otherwise, other than that, it's permanent.
Chris?
Yes, Chair, that's correct.
Sorry, I've got Councillor Woodcraft.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question's just been answered, but I'll ask you to again, just to make absolutely sure. So supposing they want to put up a big TV to show the coronation, they could get a temporary events notice, apply for that, presumably. Would that be the case?
I don't know whether that would require a temporary events notice. I'm not a licensing expert. In terms of the planning condition, then strictly speaking, that would need a Section 73 application to vary it. I mean, the coronation might result in all sorts of slight breaches of planning conditions, I suspect. But yeah, strictly speaking, it ought to have an application to vary it.
Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, I think that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Brian?
Right, thank you. A couple of questions relating to page 60. It's mentioned that there are, at the bottom of page 60, there are no direct impacts on biodiversity, and any impact is indirect. So what would that mean? Have you got an example what an indirect impact would be?
I believe what that is meaning is going back to the previous page.
Apologise for this. Try and continue if you can, Chris.
Going back to the previous page, that has a section on ecology which essentially says that there's an existing beer garden there with elements of lighting, with noise, with people gathering, and that the wildlife within the woodland closest to that will be to a degree habituated to that. And we don't feel that the minor increases that might occur will exacerbate any of those concerns to a degree that's a problem. And by indirect, I think what we're saying there is there's no physical works taking place in the woodland, and it's a consequence of the actions over the fence, if you like.
Sorry, Chair, could I just ask members to confirm they heard the answer from the planning officer there? Because I think this disruption might be a problem for some people.
You can most certainly. Did you hear that? Did you understand that? Do you want me, Chris, to
I
ask
did.
Chris
It was
to
about the physical distance. That's the number of it between the pub and the wildlife nearby. Yeah. So just a second question, if we could concentrate, which is in connection with. When this application came forward, there was a request for TV, a screen, and speakers outside. So this was decided was inappropriate, quite rightly, I think. Was there any discussion about what would be able to accommodate that? For example, if the developer of the pub wanted to put up a wall that would separate or a fence, was that discussed at any point during the discussions with the developer?
Chris?
I don't believe it was, Chair. No, it was a simple matter of officers confirming that we felt that the TV and speaker weren't acceptable and invited them to remove it, or we'd deal with it as it stood, which would likely be a refusal.
Okay, thank you. Are members happy that they managed to hear questions and responses there? Okay, thank you. Okay. Do I have any more questions? No, I'll move on to comments then. Would any member like to make a comment? Councillor Price.
Just to say, Chair, I fully support the officer recommendation. I think it's quite a nice attractive development for that pub. It's surrounded by woodland, which gives it that shelter. It's clearly already used because there's chairs and tables already outside. And I just think pubs these days need every bit of help they can get to survive. And I just think it's a nice attraction, and it'll serve the customers better. Especially all you go outside and shelter from the rain. So I fully support the recommendation, Chair. Compared to many other pubs, I think it's quite a good development. I'll support it.
Thank you, Councillor. No, what? Oh, Councillor Woodcraft?
Yes, I mean, I fully agree with Councillor Price. I think it will enhance the pub. I think the effect on neighbouring houses is going to be slight, if any, really. So I mean, I'm very much minded to support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davison.
I think the plans have covered the bases now, all bases, and I'm going to support it.
Thank you. I can see no more indications. Oh, Councillor Humshaw.
Sorry, just a quick one. The development here will increase the light that's in the area, it will increase the noise that's in the area, but there doesn't seem to be anything substantially within planning that could be result in me abstaining or voting against.
Okay, thank you for that. I shall go round the room now and ask members to indicate if, for the reasons as set out in the report, they support the officer recommendation, which is to approve. Councillor Woodcock.
For the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Humshaw.
I'll vote for the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Price.
Support the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Downs.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Weatherall.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Chaplin.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Davison.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Masters.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Woodcraft.
For the recommendation, Chair.
And Councillor McCann.
For the recommendation, Chair.
It's unanimous.
So that's a unanimous decision. That application is passed. Thank you very much. Chris, if you'd like to escape now, thank you very much for your services. And we move on to the second item on the agenda today, and we need a slight... Oh, Vicky, you're going to
Thank
remind me
you.
who needs to come and who needs to go?
Yeah, there is that, Chair, but I was just wondering if we could have a 5-minute break, please, to see if we can get facilities management to see to this noise. I think if members are happy to carry on, it's just obviously, you know, it might be bothering some people. I don't know.
Would we like a 5-minute break? 5-minute break. I'm not twisting anybody's arms, but if we can suspend recording, please, Jay, for 5 minutes while we get someone to... Buddy, for your patience. Apparently, it wasn't a generator outside. It was one of the radiators attempting to blow up, which has now been fixed by the jamming of a chair leg against it to steady it. Oh, the joys of a listed building. Now we're coming to agenda item 7A. And I have to thank these members for their service, but ask them to leave the room. Councillor Barbara Masters, Councillor Mike Chaplin, Councillor Tony Dans, Councillor Brian Holmeshaw, and Councillor Alan Woodcock. The reason for that is that we have to have the same people making the decisions and listening to the debate as happened at last month's meeting. We can't have different members here for transparency and legal reasons making a decision. And at this stage, I will ask, please, Councillor Henry Nottage if he'll come and take his seat at the table, because he was substituting last time round and has been a present fixture for the last 3 months. So thank you very much. Now, this item, agenda item 7A, is a report clarification. We're treating it as a deferred item so we can be absolutely sure the advice that members are getting for planning application number 22/01020, a full application for the building between Cotton Street and Alma Street. I'm going to hand over to Dinah for the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to go through the full presentation, but I have just left a photograph of the building on the screen for you, just to remind you which one it is, the building between Cotton Street and Alma Street, the long 2-storey sort of grey rendered building on the photographs there. And can I please draw members' attention to the supplementary report? It's item 1, but it's the section on page 3 titled Supplementary Information, 18th of April. Again, I don't intend to read through the supplementary information from the 14th of February and the 14th of March. So at the Planning and Highways Committee meeting held on the 14th of March, members resolved to grant planning permission in accordance with the recommendation, subject to the completion of a legal agreement. Following the meeting, officers realised that they had mistakenly quoted the wrong policy from the publication draft local plan in response to a point raised by the Speaker, Robin Hughes of Hallamshire Historic Buildings, regarding objections to proposed policy NC2. Mr Hughes pointed out that Joined Up Heritage Sheffield had proposed an amendment to proposed policy NC2, which relates to development in residential zones, which he considered to constitute an objection, and that the weight given to the designation of the site as a residential zone should therefore be diminished. In response, officers agree that very limited weight can be attached to the publication draft local plan at this stage. No objections have been submitted to the designation of this site as in a residential zone. It is correct, however, that comments received from Joined Up Heritage in relation to policy NC2 included a request for an amendment to that policy, which states, in residential zones, traditional manufacturing by small businesses in buildings historically occupied by such businesses will be an acceptable use. It's considered that that proposed amendment would make no practical difference to the implications of the draft local plan on this application. As drafted, policy NC2 already defines commercial, business and service uses which fall within Class E as acceptable uses. The existing silversmith is a business which falls within Class E as stated in the original officer report, and so it's an acceptable use under the draft policy, which allows for the retention and creation of Class E uses in the area. Members are reminded that the planning system cannot force a specific business to be retained in a specific area, and that proposed policy NC2 reinforces the direction set in the core strategy and strategic vision to prefer housing in these areas, whilst identifying commercial uses as acceptable. We've also received an additional representation from Mr. Robin Hughes, and that raises concerns about the application of the tilted balance in this case. Specifically, it is claimed that the test under NPPF paragraph 11D, lim 2, has been applied, but that designated heritage assets should be considered under lim 1. It is also claimed that weight has been wrongly applied to the public benefits of the scheme because under lim 1, the planning balance is not tilted by the NPPF but operates unmodified. As referenced in the committee report, paragraph 202 of the NPPF states that where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including, where appropriate, securing its optimum viable use. The report concludes that there will be less than substantial harm to the significance of the heritage asset, and it then goes on to weigh that harm against the public benefits, which include the future security and retention of the existing building, the creation of jobs through the construction process, and the provision of new housing units at a time when the city falls far short of the required 5-year housing supply, amongst other benefits. Having carried out the assessment required under paragraph 202, the report later confirms that there is no clear reason for refusal, ruling out the test under NPPF paragraph 11D lim 1, but it then goes on and applies the tilted balance.
Chair, can I just check that the officer is reading the supplementary report that's on in front of me?
Right.
Yeah.
Apologies, we have an old copy.
Thank you for that, Vicky.
So going back, and I'm going to go back a paragraph just to make sure it's clear. So the report concludes that there will be less than substantial harm to the significance of the heritage asset, and it goes on to weigh that harm against the public benefits, which include the future security and retention of the building, the creation of jobs through the construction process, and the provision of new housing units at a time when the city falls far short of the required 5-year housing supply. Following consideration of the benefits, the report then confirms compliance with paragraph 202, and so there is no clear reason for refusal, which rules out paragraph 11D lim 1, but it then continues to apply the tilted balance under lim 2, which is engaged as a result of the absence of the 5-year housing land supply. So that addresses the additional representation that we received. So members of the committee are therefore recommended to uphold their original decision and to grant planning permission subject to the listed conditions as amended and the completion of a legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Diana. Now, I will proceed to members' questions against what Diana's just said, and I've got Councillor Davison indicating.
Yes, thank you very much. The proposal for an amendment, which we have in front of us here, does not actually specify where that is, and we could actually agree to that without specifying an area. Is that correct? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. The amendment proposed by Joined Up Heritage is a proposed amendment to the draft local plan, to policy NC2 of the local plan. So that, and I'm just going to show you what it relates to. It relates to the proposed residential zone that you can see here on the screen in front of you. That's the grey area. And the site that's been considered is sort of in the southeast corner of that residential zone. So the proposal put forward by Joined Up Heritage is in relation to the consultation on the draft local plan and specifically draft policy NC2, not in relation to this planning application. So that will be considered as part of the consideration of all the consultee comments that have been put forward as part of the draft local plan consultation. And as I've said, the existing policy doesn't actually exclude Class E uses in any case. They would be allowed under the draft local plan in any case, as the, you know. So it's not an amendment for us to consider as part of this application, for you to consider, sorry, it's part of the local plan.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Nottage indicate.
Thank you, Chair. The inclusion of the amendment, does that have any relation to the fact that we are now accorded to apply very limited weight to the emerging local plan, whereas when we previously made this decision, we accorded some weight to the emerging local plan?
Daniel, is that possible to answer?
Thank you, Chair. I think it all depends on the position you are in the process, and also it depends on whether or not the amount of weight that you can give to the emerging plan depends on whether we've received objections to particular policies and where we are in considering those objections. And at the moment, although we don't think we've actually received any objections to policy NC2, there have been comments received relating to it. But I think, you know, we're at an early point in assessing all those comments. So I think, regardless, we can really only give very limited weight to the emerging plan. But it's probably worth saying that the residential zone, I mean, residential uses are already sort of acceptable in this area, in this, you know, on this site. And we've got core strategies currently that we can give weight to that do allow and indeed encourage residential uses in this site. So there's some alignment, and you know, between existing policy and the emerging policy.
Is that satisfactory? Yeah, okay, thank you. I have no more questions, so I'm going to pass to comment. Would any member like to make a comment? Councillor Davison.
Thank you very much. I mean, I can't really reverse what I'd said at the last one, because over 50 years ago, as a student, I worked in this area, and it was then there was a lot of housing, a lot of back-to-back houses, and so on. So the factories and the workplaces did work together. Now, I also supported later on the change that took place where they wanted to separate work and business or factories. Now we've come to a different era where we want to use as little fuel as possible from getting from our homes to our work. So I'm happy to have a mixture where that is feasible. Now, this is an area that's always had housing and business. Personally, I would like them to go back to the drawing board and show us where they can have both in this particular planning area to show that you can have housing and, in this case, a very small silversmith business. So it is a change of use of business for the building. So in legal terms, I can go against that because that would fulfil planning rules. So I am now again sticking with the decision that I decided earlier, and I'm going to vote against this, hoping that, well, I would have hoped that we could marry the two together, but this is not what the proposal is about, so I'm voting against it.
Thank you, Councillor. I've also got Councillor Peter Price.
Thank you, Chair. I've every sympathy with what Roger said, but I'm going to stick with my original decision as well. It is a difficult one. It is a fine dividing line between interest in housing. But the most important thing to the city at the moment is to find homes, and a lot of them, if we're going to protect the green belt and a lot of our green areas. So I'm going to stand by my original decision, Chair, and support the officer recommendation.
Councillor Nottage, do you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Chair. I'm probably going to be the first, or maybe the only person to have changed my mind on this one, having had time for reflection, and also based on various things, including the fact that we recognise affordable housing as an essential thing to have in our society, which these aren't, but we don't recognise affordable workplaces. And I think there's a very grave risk of us forcing various things out of existence. So I'll be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor. And I've got Councillor Woodcraft for a comment.
Thank you, Chair. This is a difficult decision. I mean, we've got a building here which is not in brilliant condition. There's no chance of it being improved. It's into dilapidation, and against that, we've got the possibility of more housing, and we have a housing shortage. So I'm reluctantly going to vote for the officer recommendation on the basis of housing shortage and actually protecting this building and for future generations.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Right, I see no more indications, so now I'm going to go for the vote. And I'm going to go around the room and ask members to indicate if they, for the reasons as set out in the report, accept the officer recommendation, which is to grant conditionally subject to legal agreement. Councillor Price?
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Weatherall?
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Nottage?
Against the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Davison?
Against the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Woodcraft?
For the recommendation, Chair.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much. Abby?
I'll make that 4 and 2 against.
So that application is carried 4 for and 2 against. Thank you for your time. Now we come to the last item on today's agenda, which is the record of planning appeal submissions and decisions, which starts on page 61 of your agenda. Dinah, is there anything that you would want to bring to members' attention on this matter?
No, Chair, thank you. I mean, there's a very long sort of dismissed enforcement appeal, which is probably worth a read, but it's relatively straightforward, and I don't think it needs highlighting on this occasion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Are members happy to note this report? Thank you. Now, the provisional date of the next meeting, given it's the other side of the elections and the AGM, is Tuesday the 23rd of May 2023 at 2 p.m. I may see some of you here, I may not. But I thank all members for their service on this committee and thank officers for their support and helping us get through some very difficult decisions this year. Thank you very much. Okay.